for Speaker. You took some credit for that. Why?
Well, I've been taking a little bit of credit because people have been giving me credit on @real Donald Trump. They're saying that I spoke up against him only because it's a question of toughness. He didn't seem like the guy. We need toughness. We need this, we need the brain power, and we need toughness. And when he made the statement on Benghazi, it was a tough statement. That was a really bad statement for Republicans and even for the nation, in a sense, because he so disparaged what's going on. And I happen to believe that what they're doing is the right thing, and they're doing it for the right reason. But it was so disparaging to what's taking place with respect to Hillary Clinton and that whole fiasco that maybe she created. And I didn't like seeing that.
Paul Ryan's name is mentioned as a possible speaker. What do you think of Paul Ryan?
Well, I think he's somebody that could get good support. I think he's a very nice person. I think he doesn't want it very badly, but you never know. Maybe he's playing one of the great games of all time. It is Speaker of the House. I mean, it's a great position. But he doesn't seem to want it, but I'll bet you that if it was actually offered to him, he would take it.
You said you want somebody strong. Is Paul Ryan strong?
I think he's strong. I disagree with some of the things. I think that when Mitt Romney chose him last time, it was a tough choice because he's been so anti-Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security in a sense. Now, he would say he hasn't been, but they certainly played that up hard. And that was a disastrous campaign for a lot of reasons. But Paul Ryan's a good man. I know him very little, but I think he's a very good person.
So you'd be okay with Speaker Paul Ryan?
I would be okay. I would be okay. It may not be him. I mean, they have a couple of people in there. I'm not going to mention names, but people I know that are really tough and really smart. And right now, that's what we need because the Republicans never win. John, they never win. Everything, whether it's on Obamacare, whether it's on the debt ceiling, no matter what we have, there's never, ever a victory. So we need a toughness that we just don't have there right now.
Do you think some of the conservatives who pushed out Boehner, pushed out McCarthy, take inspiration from your campaign?
I don't know. I will tell you, a lot of them contact me, and they do like what I'm saying, and they like me very much. I never even met them. A couple of them called, and I see they're very big people in the world of politics, but I didn't know them. And they are really impressed with what I've done, and they see the kind of poll numbers I'm getting, and they're saying, that's it. But you know, the problem that they have is they have such a big group of people that say before the negotiation even starts, it's not going to happen, we're not going to close down government, we're not going to this, we're not going to that. So Obama and the Democrats can just sit back and let the Republicans do it. You know, if they would actually get together where they had a really unified front, you wouldn't ever be closing down, and they'd have victories.
You said that Republicans should do, and I'm quoting from you here, something really, really significant with the coming debt ceiling vote. That's the vote on whether the United States government can keep borrowing money. What can Republicans do with that upcoming vote in December? What leverage do they have over the president?
Well, John, if you go back and check, I've been saying this for 3 years, all right? That's a tremendously powerful weapon if they knew how to use it. The problem is you'll have 70% of the Republicans say, we're not closing government. Now, when you say that, you know, I wrote The Art of the Deal. When you say that, and the other side says, well, we got 70% of the people say it's not going to happen, the other 30% are essentially, they're rendered useless. It's really very unfair to them because they're left out there hanging. So you need somebody that can unify, can be tough, and can win against the Democrats and against others. I mean, in all fairness, against the world, essentially. But they really do have a tremendously powerful weapon, but they don't use it, and they don't use it properly. They are terrible negotiators.
What should they get? What does winning mean? What do you want them to get?
Well, it depends. I mean, Planned Parenthood, defunding, Obamacare. They could have won Obamacare. Now, they should have won it in the Supreme Court because John Roberts, Justice Roberts, should have, you know, knocked it out twice. If you really think about it, that was a Bush appointment. That was actually a Jeb Bush appointment because they were close. And Jeb is the one that forced him down his brother's throat. But think of it. John Roberts should have knocked it out twice. There was no reason legally that that was supportable. There was no reason, especially the first time. The first time would have been knocked out. The second time it would have eventually died had he raised his hand in the right direction. But it's so sad. When I look at what's happening to this country, it's so sad.
John Boehner, after he announced that he was resigning, said that there were false prophets in the Republican Party. And I'm quoting, he said, these false prophets are whipping people into a frenzy, believing they can accomplish things that they know are never going to happen. He's kind of talking about you.
I don't think so. But first of all, I know him, I like him on a personal basis. But I do think they should be tougher. But here's the problem. When he says false prophets, you cannot win when you have a group of 25 or 30% on this side, and you have a group of 70% on this side saying we're never going to go along with the 30%ers who want more. That's what's happening. And every time I watch it, I say it's so sad, because if they were really unified, and if they took that 30% stance, assuming they wanted to really make changes and do it right, and cut the budget, cut the deficit, do things that they should be doing, if they took that group, and if everybody was unified, Obama would fold. But there's no reason for him to ever fold, because he knows that a big proportion, a vast majority of the Republicans are on his side.
The administration has pulled the plug on its plan to train and equip Syrian rebels. What would you do in that case?
Well, they did the right thing. We don't know who these rebels are. And I was out there early. I was on your last show, the last time I did it. I said, look, it's wonderful to support rebels, but every time we support rebels, do you think we're better off without Gaddafi? Look what you talk about Benghazi. The rebels are the ones that did these horrible things to our ambassador and the people. And he was going down the street with the flag and the whole thing, and then they turned on him like viciously. And by the way, viciously, that was a vicious death that you haven't reported and people haven't reported, but he died a horrible death. But so we're always fighting for the rebels. We have no idea. A very respected general, whose name I won't mention yet, and I will if he lets me, but I'd love to actually. But I was talking to him about it the other day. He said, we don't even know who these people are. So we're going to spend billions of dollars. We're going to take over Assad, which, by the way, is no longer very easy to do because you have Russia in there doing a big number. Okay, but forget it. But why are we supporting these people? We have to rebuild our roads, our bridges, our airports. We have to get back to work in our own country.
I want to ask you about your view on the use of military power. You say in personal relations you're a counterpuncher. You don't hit until you are hit. Is that a good way to think about the way you would use military force as a president?
I think generally speaking, look, I am the most militaristic person that's on your show, okay? And you've had everybody, would you say? One way or the other. Between you and Bob, soon you will have had everybody. But you've had everybody. I am the most military-based and the most militaristic person on your show. I want to have a much stronger military. I want it to be so strong that nobody's going to mess with us. I want to take care of our vets who are treated terribly like third-class citizens. I mean, we have illegal immigrants that are being treated better than our great vets. They're like third-class citizens. They're going to be taken care of. But we have to make our military strong and hopefully never have to use it.
Well, let's take an example of some case where you may or may not use military force. Turns out Assad apparently used chemical weapons on his own people. Does President Trump use force or not in that case?
Well, you know, the time to have done it would have been when he drew the line in the sand.
So you would have done it in that case?
I might have gone in. Yeah, I think it's terrible. When you start using that, I think it's terrible. Now it's such a mess over there with everybody involved, and the airspace is very limited. You know, it's not that big an area. The airspace is very limited. So now you have, what are we going to start, World War III over Syria? And my attitude is very simple. We shouldn't have been in Iraq. Absolutely shouldn't have been. And I said it in 2004, 2003, headlines, Trump says don't go. We shouldn't have been. We totally destabilized the Middle East. And by the way, Iran is taking over Iraq. They're taking over the oil. And the other one taking the oil, as you know, is ISIS, okay? I also said once we're in, keep the oil. And everyone thought that was such a terrible statement. That was such a nasty. We should have kept the oil. So now ISIS has the oil. And Iran is going to have it because ultimately, I mean, Iran and Iraq now are good buddies. Had we not done anything, and this was Bush's fault, had we not done anything, they'd still be like this. They'd still be, you know, countering each other. I mean, look, we've totally destabilized the Middle East. It's a mess. And when Russia gets in there, they're going to go also against ISIS, and now they're starting to. But they don't want, and the reason I say that is from their own standpoint. They don't want ISIS going into Russia.
Where are you on the question of a safe zone or a no-fly zone in Syria?
I love a safe zone for people. I do not like the migration. I do not like the people coming. Frankly, look, Europe's going to have to handle, but they're going to have riots in Germany. What's happening in Germany, I always thought Merkel was like this great leader. What she's done in Germany is insane. It's insane. They're having all sorts of attacks. They're having
you mean letting in the
that many people. What they should do is the countries should all get together, including the Gulf states who have nothing but money. They should all get together and they should take a big swath of land in Syria and they should do a safe zone for people so that they could have a safe where they could live. And then ultimately go back to their country, go back to where they came from.
Does the U.S. get involved in making that safe zone?
I would help them economically, even though we own $19 trillion. What I won't do is take in 200,000 Syrians who could be ISIS. John, I've been watching this migration and I see the people. I mean, they're men. They're mostly men, and they're strong men. These are physically young, strong men. They look like prime-time soldiers. Now, it's probably not true, but where are the women? You see some women, you see some children, but for the most part, I'm looking at these strong men. So you ask two things. Number one, why aren't they fighting for their country? And number two, I don't want these people coming over here. And even on a humanitarian, when I was first asked this question, you asked it to me a long time ago, when they were talking about 3,000 people, I begrudgingly would say, oh, maybe, I don't know, maybe.
Letting them into the United
States. A
States.
little bit. Then they said 10,000. I'm not thrilled, but maybe 200,000 people. This could be the greatest Trojan horse. This could make the Trojan horse look like peanuts if these people turned out to be a lot of ISIS.
You said you might have gone in militarily in Syria when chemical weapons were used.
Well,
what
that was
about
a long
in
time
Ukraine?
ago. That's
Sure.
before Russia.
Sure.
That's before all
when
this
it was
stuff.
first discovered.
Right. We don't know who the rebels are. However, when he's using gases and all sorts of things that are really, outlawed, I mean, it's tough when you say you have war and you're outlawing because ultimately what people are trying to do, and they're not looking at, oh, gee, we're not supposed to do this, we're not supposed to do that, these politically correct wars. The fact is he's using things that are horrible and destroying people and destroying life. But supposing I told you the rebels might be worse. They might be worse. The rebels that we're fighting for might be worse.
Quickly, Putin goes into Ukraine. What does President Trump do? Military use
I'll tell you
or
what
not?
I do. I'll tell you how I feel about Ukraine. I think Ukraine's a wonderful place. I think that it's, I've been there and I think it's great. But Germany and all these countries should be doing something. Why is it always us? What do we have to do with Ukraine? It's wonderful. We have NATO, we're going to work with them, we're going to... But why isn't Germany? They're massively wealthy. They're sending us a Mercedes-Benz a second, okay? Why isn't Germany, this great economic behemoth, why aren't they saying, why is it always the United States that has to go and be the policeman of the world? Again, John, we're now up to 19 trillion in debt. We don't know what we're doing. We're getting clobbered by everybody. We don't have victories anymore. You know what? I'm all for helping the Ukrainians, but we shouldn't be the lead. The European countries should be the lead.
Peggy Noonan writes that you and Vladimir Putin are showing strength. Do you have similarities with Vladimir Putin?
Well, I like her, I can tell you that. I think Peggy Noonan is fantastic, and she's been writing some nice things. Every once in a while she'll hit me, but that's okay. But I think she's fantastic. No, I think the biggest thing we have is that we were on 60 Minutes together and we had fantastic ratings, one of your best rated shows in a long time, so that was good, right? So we were stablemates. I think that we are very different. I think that I would, at the same time, get along very well with him. He does not like Obama at all. He doesn't respect Obama at all. And I'm sure that Obama doesn't like him very much. But I think that I would probably get along with him very well, and I don't think you'd be having the kind of problems that you're having right now. And as far as him attacking ISIS, I'm all for it. If he wants to be bombing the hell out of ISIS, which he's starting to do, if he wants to be bombing ISIS, let him bomb him, John. Let him bomb him. I think we'd probably work together much more so than right now. We've done one thing with Putin that's horrible. From the time I'm a little boy, I've always heard, don't let Russia ever get together with China. Don't let it happen. We forced, because of the oil, we have forced Russia back to China, and now we have this alliance. And now we have Iran, too, on top of it. So now we have China, Iran, right? And we have Russia. It's a disaster. Worst foreign policy in our history probably is what's happening over the last 5 or 6 years.
You have a concealed weapons permit.
Yes.
When did you get it?
Years ago.
Why?
Because I like to have myself protected.
Do you carry on a...
Sometimes.
Would you advise, in the context of current gun violence, would you advise people to get that?
Well, I'm a big Second Amendment person. Big, as you probably know. In fact, I'm coming out with a book in another 3 or 4 weeks called Crippled America. Tough words. Crippled America. I talk a lot about the Second Amendment in the book. Had they had, as an example, for the horrible thing that just took place, okay, horrible, in Oregon, had somebody in that room had a gun, the result would have been better.
So should people get armed the way you are?
That's up to them, but I will tell you, I feel much better being armed.
What about teachers?
I think that if you had the teacher, assuming they knew how to use the weapon, which hopefully they would, you would have been a lot better when this maniac walked into class starting to shoot people.
Let me ask you about your tax plan. Conservative tax group did the numbers, looked at even the economic benefits from growth and said it would cost $10 trillion. But that's not all. You said you want to protect Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. You want to expand health care for all, make the Veterans Administration better. How are you going to pay for all
Because
that?
we're going to expand the economy incredibly, and I'm taking our jobs back from China, from Japan, from Mexico, from all of these countries that have just ripped us like never before. You know, if you go downstairs right under this floor, you have the biggest bank in the world. It's a China bank. I know all about China. I know more about China than probably most people, okay? I deal with them a lot, between buying apartments for $25 to $50 million and tenants. Let me just tell you, China has, and I respect China, and I respect their leaders. Our leaders just aren't smart enough to handle them. China has created one of the great thefts in the history of the world with what they've done to our country. We're going to bring jobs back to this country. We're going to become a successful country again.
But you're going to have to cut something. So what are you
Oh,
going
we're
to
going
cut?
to cut. Well,
What are you going
first
to
of all,
cut?
you have tremendous fraud and abuse with Medicare, Medicaid. I mean, you have
But you're not
tremendous
gonna
numbers. No, but you have tremendous numbers, and we're going to expand the economy, and we're going to be a very strong country again. You're going to be able to do it. You know what what's been done to us economically, John?
That's your case, but the thing is, when you look at your numbers, and I talk to people who have looked at the numbers, they just don't believe them at all.
Well, they don't believe that we're going to be able to expand to the extent that we're expanding, and I'm telling you we will be. When we bring our jobs back to this country, when we start charging China, now just so you understand, when you make a deal with China, if I'm a manufacturer, if I want to sell something in China, number one, it's impossible to get it over there, but if you do, you're going to pay a massive tax. We don't treat them properly. We have to do the same thing to them. When you start charging tariffs, which they do, now, I don't want to do that. I'm a big free trader. I believe in free trade. But we don't have free trade. We have stupid trade. When you start doing and bringing these countries, and I bring Carl Icahn and all of my friends that are the greatest negotiators in the world, and I bring them in, and you start equalizing. You know how much we lose with China each year in trade balances? Imbalance. You know what we lost last year? Almost $400 billion. Okay? When you start hearing those numbers, all of a sudden you say, wow, you know what? This starts to work. We lose $400 billion trade imbalance, U.S. trade imbalance with China, almost $400 billion a year. And that's been going on for years. Japan, almost $75 billion. Mexico, $45 billion lost.
Let me ask you about some other numbers.
Starts to make sense when you hear that, right?
You love polls. You are at the head of...
I don't love them. I only like them when I'm the number one. By the way, if I was the number one, I would never mention them.
You love polls at the moment. Our latest CBS poll has you in the lead. And it also shows that 2/3 of registered voters, 8 in 10 Republicans, say you have the strong qualities of leadership. But here's the problem.
That's a very big statement.
That's a big statement. Here's another big statement. 60% of registered voters say you are not honest and trustworthy. That number has gone up since the last poll.
It's better than Hillary.
If they think you're a leader, does it matter if they trust you?
I think the leadership is very important. I think they know I'm a very smart guy. I think they know I'm going to fight for the country. I don't need any money. I'm all self-funding. I don't need money. I've turned down millions, tens of millions of dollars from rich lobbyists and rich special interests that want to give me $5 million, $10 million, $2 million. I could have more money than Bush times 15. Now, I actually do have more money than Bush times, but it's my own money. I am spending my own money, and people respect it. Now, I think I'm leading every poll. I'm leading every poll by a lot. The leadership thing is very important. People are not, I think right now what people want is they want competence. They're tired of other things. Now, one thing I will say.
And trust doesn't matter.
Well, I think trust is very important. In my opinion, it's very important. And I happen to be an honorable guy. But one thing that's very important, when I go to New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina, where I have very good numbers in terms of favorability, you know why? Because I'm there a lot. I go there a lot. And as you know, in fact, you reported it, I went up 60 points in terms of favorability. Somebody said it was a record. That's because when people get to know me, they get to like me.
But you've been on center stage for 3 months. I mean, you've been around in center
locally,
stage for a while.
I know, but locally, those have been the states that I really have spent a lot of time.
But again, and on favorability in our poll, only 28% of voters overall, and this is, we're talking about a general election here, in our poll have a favorable opinion of
But
it.
I win hands down on leadership, right? By far, it's not even close, double and triple anybody else. That's very important to people now. They want leadership. They're tired of having weak and incompetent leaders, John.
Has your business gotten better or worse since you started running?
Well, I lost some companies, but you know, Macy's was weak and ineffective, and they heard illegal immigration, and they cut. It's a big deal. They cut ties. Who cares? But Macy's was very disloyal. I think they were disloyal to the country, if you want to know the truth. But I lost a little. But overall, I think my business probably got better. There, at the same time, I have things where it's open to the public, and like, for instance, downstairs in the lobby, the place is packed. We've never had crowds like we have right now, so it's probably a neutral.
What will you do with the empire if you're made president? Will you cut all ties? Or?
Well, what I do, I would cut all ties. Look, this is all beautiful. I built a great business. I have a tremendous, you saw it, over $600 million yearly cash flow and stuff. Look, I would cut. I wouldn't care about it. My kids will run it. I wouldn't want to expand very much. It wouldn't matter to me. I have a chance at making America great again. That's the whole focus. So my children would run my business, and my executives. I have great executives, and they'd do it well. They'd run it well. And I'm phasing out as we go along. You know, when I do these interviews, all of a sudden, they take a lot of time. But I have wonderful children that are in the business, and I have wonderful executives that run it. I would not even think about this business. It would be so insignificant to me compared to making our country great again.
You went from being a fellow who was not a fan of shaking hands to someone who yesterday, a woman came on stage, said Hispanics for Trump, and you basically gave her a back massage. That's a long, you really jumped into the politics
She's become
thing.
a very famous woman. She is a great woman. And it was all about People magazine. I said, yeah, I was on the cover of People magazine. She held it up. I said, oh, give it to her. And she came up stage. And it became she was all over the world. I mean, she could charge a lot right now for fees, for appearance fees. But she was a terrific woman and she was Hispanic. And she said, the Hispanics love Trump. We love Trump. And in that room yesterday, which you know was packed, because your people were there, was packed, and there had thousands of people outside that couldn't get in, there were many Hispanics. And you talk about polls, I won the Hispanic poll in the state of Nevada, big Hispanic population. I won it easily. So there's something going on that's been really terrific. There's something going on. It's been a great honor, I have to say.
All right, Mr. Trump, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, John.